rhetorical selling.
You're setting a low standard when you're talking about the national average based on where it is. So right off the bat, you're essentially comparing yourself to something that is clearly terrible, and you're saying, well, in these states, it's something slightly less than terrible.
What doesn't matter as much as the numbers is what is trends. So over the past 2 years, the simple reality is that unemployment has gone down. Whether or not you measure it as the U3 level, which is what we're talking about here, just unemployment, or if you take it to the much broader level, where you bring in like discouraged workers or people who only have part-time jobs, so they want full-time jobs, that number is 15%. It's not 8.3%, 8.2%. But what matters is the trends. And so if both of those numbers are coming down, over the past 2 years going into the election, then that's why I say Obama wins. What matters is this fall, is that number going to start to go back up? Is employment going to go back up? If it gets up to 9%, then I think Romney's got a chance.
The barometer against the national average, the 8.3%, is somewhat, I think, as you point out, Buck, an arbitrary thing from which to judge it against, right? It's rather, how does the voter feel? Is that number good or bad in my state? And guys, we have this poll as well. Let me put this up before you go, Amy. This one's called, Has Obama Done As Well As Could Have Been Expected? Now, many will point out, and I was on CNN this morning, and a Democratic congressman pointed out he inherited a terrible mess. And he talked again from the economy from 2000 to 2008. That's beside the point. We're talking about today. And as you can see, has Obama done as well as could be expected? 46% yes, but 52% said no. What he inherited, has he done as well as could have been expected? I think this, combined with just the general sense of, is this number good or bad? Whatever your unemployment rate is, will be the indicator.
Well, Anthony mentioned trends, and Gallup also, though, finds a trend of fewer and fewer Americans approving of the job that Obama has done in his job creation efforts. Back in February, it was 40%. Now it's down to 37%. If that number is going down, that's going against Obama. I would also look at the battle over perceptions. Among those 12 swing states where they were asked, are you better off? And they said, no, we're not better off. There was a very distinct partisan response. 50% of independents said, I'm not better off. Only 36% of Democrats said that. 84% of Republicans did. So we see here a partisan perception shift that I think that both of these campaigns are going to be battling over, particularly the independents, those 50%, to get them more towards the Democrat or the Republican side. And you see that in the ad buys. The ad buys are in all these states.
I wonder if those, again, in the middle, the independents, that sort of swath of Americans that you're actually trying to win over to win the election, when they look at this and when they look at or deal with Will's question, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? Are they too worried? Are they really concerned? Is it, if I don't vote for Obama, I'm not voting for the things that right now I need, which may be federal assistance, which may be, whatever the case is, if you're getting some kind of subsidy, if you're getting unemployment insurance, I worry that those people in that middle demographic are going to say, Barack Obama says he's going to keep taking care of me from the federal level, and when things get better, well, then things will get better.
So the social Darwinism charge of Obama against Romney?
I'm wondering how that plays in those middle sectors.
Rather the tailored politics of it is what you're saying, the pandering. I can't help you for this. We look across these states, and many of them what we call the Rust Belt, right? So my only rebuttal to you would be this. They've heard that message for 4 years. They've heard the message of, I will do something for manufacturing. I will do something for the middle class over and over and over. It's not a new message. And if they have heard it this often and they still feel like they're not better off than they were 4 years ago, might be falling on deaf ears.
I'm surprised that it's not a bigger gulf than it is. I don't know. I can't imagine you would be somebody who at this point is still confused over who you'd be voting for, but there they are.
Well, Niall Ferguson has a great cover piece this week
in Newsweek. Yep.
And in it, he makes the point that under Obama, we've become essentially a 50-50 nation. 50% not paying taxes, the other 50% paying for their welfare services. It's really a good piece and a shocking one for Newsweek to feature. But I'm wondering if this election is going to be about a backward-looking question to which this poll looks. Could he have done better? Or has he done as well as could be expected? That's a backward-looking question.
Right.
Or are voters more concerned, what are the next 4 years of my life going to look like?
Well, interesting.
That's the difference.
That's why Romney's message is maybe not going to land home. If all he's talking about is tax cuts and like lowering regulations, does that actually bring back jobs? Is that what, if you're in the Rust Belt, is that the message that you want to hear? The other thing that Niall Ferguson mentioned in his article is that incomes have fallen under President Obama 5% since 2009. Real median incomes have fallen. So that's a trend that really could matter. But if Romney is not talking about income, if Romney's not saying, hey, middle class, you know what I'm going to do? Not only am I going to be able to lower your tax burden, but you're going to get better jobs at higher pay. If that's not his message, It's not really clear that you're going to vote for Romney.
But to Essie's point about whether this is a referendum on Obama's, first term, if it's a look back or a look forward on what Romney's going to deliver, wasn't Paul Ryan an answer, at least from the Romney camp, as to what this election is about, at least in part, that it's looking for? That's what a lot of the
That's what you're hoping if you're a Republican. And I hope that the Romney camp makes the case that by Obama's own standards, he has failed. They set out very explicit expectations, and we can show charts all day. This is what they promised if we spend the stimulus money. This is what they promised if we send the debt through the stratosphere. And on none of those counts were they successful. Only in the public sector does it seem to work, where you can say, well, things were so tough when I took over, but I should still still keep my job. If you're the CEO of a company and you said the earnings statements were bad before I was in charge, you had 4 years, they didn't turn around, you would be fired.
Right,
that's just the way it works.
The criticism of the Romney campaign was, just pointing fingers at Obama and saying that he didn't do his job. It wasn't enough. It wasn't closing the deal with voters. You need to look forward and tell them what you're going to deliver for the next 4 years. And it seems that maybe the Romney campaign has made that switch, that adjustment.
Your suggestion that Paul Ryan might be that switch, I think, is interesting. There was a couple polls also that came out last week that showed what Paul Ryan's favorability rate was in his own home state of Wisconsin, and it was incredibly high. He had over a 50% favorability rate in Wisconsin, while obviously pushing some anti-populist measures such as entitlement reform. What that says to me is nationwide we know Paul Ryan's still largely unknown. The more you get to know him, the more you like him. And how much does the voter in Wisconsin reflect the voter in Ohio, in Iowa, in Virginia? I don't know, but it's got to be at least optimistic.
In Wisconsin, that's a great point. We've talked about this before. Wisconsin votes for Democratic presidents. Paul Ryan's district in Wisconsin votes for Democratic presidents, and yet also votes for Paul Ryan. So there might be this small part of a Democrat's heart that makes allowances, we used to call them blue dogs, makes allowances for this economic fiscal responsibility that leads them to pull the lever for Paul Ryan. And maybe you'll be seeing that among more independents this year as well.
I still think the